Lady, good morning to you as well. Yes, that is my job this morning. I'll be speaking to political parties across the spectrum in Parliament, all of whom, of course, have something to say about what they're expecting to hear the ministers say later on today. Many parties have already released statements or have had press conferences. And one of the parties who held a press conference yesterday was the DA. And with me to unpack the DA's expectations of the speech is Dion George. Good morning, sir. Thank you so much for joining us today. We had a lot to speak about earlier on. Just give me the gist of what it is. I know that you are looking at economic recovery. I think that's at the top of your wish list today.
Yes, we know the minister's in a very tight spot, but that is actually self-induced. Government's been mismanaging our economy for over 2 decades now, so that is a problem. But what we want to hear from the minister is what is he going to do to accelerate economic growth? In particular, we want to know how it's going to become easier for small business in particular and for entrepreneurs to grow in our economy, because we know that if they can do that, we can have more revenue into the fisc and we'll have less people in unemployment. So that's the one thing we're going to look at. We're also very much interested to see how the minister is going to be managing debt. Treasury has promised that the debt will be reduced over the next 2 years within a specific target, but there's no sign of that. We want to know what he's going to do. And also specifically because the minister's already been talking about taking Eskom's debt and putting it onto the national balance sheet, we want to know whether they're going to do that and what the implications are, because we know if you've got to pay more interest, you have less money available to pay for service delivery, specifically for the most poor people in South Africa. We're also going to be looking at what relief measures the minister's going to be offering for the spiralling cost of living. We know that many South African households are battling to put food on the table because of the cost of living. The DA has made proposals to increase the VAT zero-rated food basket, and we want to hear something from the minister. Usually he'd say something in February on it, but we believe because it's a crisis he should do it now. So we want to know what he's going to do to help those struggling households. We also want to know what's going to be happening with the social grant, because the DA has proposed a conditional basic income grant that we believe is doable, obviously based on whether the economy can grow. So those are the fundamental things we're looking for. We're also very interested to see what he's going to be doing about corruption, because we've had talk about the response to the Zondo Commission, etc., but we've also got the threat of grey listing next year. We know that there's massive gaps. We know that the NPA is underfunded, so we'd want to see him doing something to the appropriation to give more money to the NPA, because it's all about prosecution. So it's all good and well to identify the transaction that's suspicious and report it, but then what happens in terms of prosecution? So we want to hear something about that, because obviously a corrupt economy is not efficient and it gets in the way of growth. So we have expectations of the minister. We're going to hold him to account on it. He did say in Parliament when I asked him that he would subject our basket of VAT zero-rated foodstuffs to a panel if we ask him. I have asked him. I've been to Pretoria to hand over demands, so we expect him to do something, because South Africans are battling and it is government's responsibility to respond.
Mr. George, corruption, the Zondo report and grey listing, they go hand in hand essentially, because we know what the Financial Action Task Force is looking for in that sense. Analysts I've spoken to in the week, economists I've spoken to, have all said that yes, well, we don't have room to move in terms of spending more money on the implementation of the Zondo Commission recommendations and the setting up of more commissions. They actually said it's going to be more expensive. We're going to have bigger losses if we don't implement. There's not much room to move. Where do you think the money should come from to do those recommendations, to implement the recommendations?
I think the thing is, there is in fact money. South Africa is not a poor country. We're only poor because our government mismanages our economy. We don't need another commission. We know what's been said. People have been doing corruption. What's so difficult? We've identified them and put them into jail. There is no political will. That's the problem. So it's implementation of it. Government will always say, I want to have another commission, I want to wait for something, etc., and then I have no money. That is absolute nonsense. You don't need to take money from other places to do this. What you do need to do is to give more money to the NPA, the National Prosecuting Authority. That's a no-brainer. They must get more money, but I think it's a political game. You keep them very lean on resources and they're unable to function. So that's what needs to happen. Don't need to spend money on a commission. What you need to do is spend money on prosecuting people that have been committing these crimes. The crime needs to be identified, which is fairly easy because we've got accountable institutions that do that, banks, etc. We have the FIC, the Financial Intelligence Center, that actually gets the reports from the banks. What it has to do is look at the report and then pass it on for prosecution. It's not difficult, but government makes it exceptionally difficult because it has no political will to do anything about its politically connected cronies who are stealing the people's money.
Mr. George, thank you so much for your time, but I will be catching up with you later on when you are going to be sharing your reaction to the Minister's statement this afternoon. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Well, there you have it, Dion George of the DA, of course. His speciality is finance for the party. We are going to be speaking to more opposition parties as the day goes by, or at least before the Minister actually sits this afternoon. And of course, as soon as those parties come to us, we will be crossing to you again. Back to you in the studio.
Abra, thank you so much for that. Our reporter Abra Barbier speaking to us there from the Western Cape. Well,